if you have an urgent need, which I think most everybody does right now, why is your career page hidden at the bottom of your page?
Isn't there like a saying that like all the best talent already has a job?
I mean, I think so. Or they're entrepreneurs.
Right.
There are platforms that you can actually proactively contact the type of candidate that you want to contact. The key is knowing how to craft the outreach.
Hello and welcome to Gym World Worldwide. I'm John Franklin, your host, joined with my partner in crime and a business, Mateo Lopez. And here for you today, we have a special guest, Jessie Stackhouse of Just Fitness Staffing, the OG staffing agency for personal trainers and gym owners. How are you doing today?
I love that. I'm so good. It's such a pleasure to be on with you. So thank you. Sitting at the base of the Hollywood sign, can't complain.
Yeah, I have a fresh epidural in my spine, so I can't
Yeah.
complain either. So I can stand for a solid 45 minutes. So let's do it. We hear from gym owners all the time that they have difficulty hiring for personal trainers. They have difficulty hiring for general managers. You do this like all day, every day. Give us a little insight into your process and some of the mistakes that you see gym owners making.
Yeah, that's the number one thing I would hear across the board. 11 years ago, just getting into this, it's the thing everybody asks. How do you find trainers? How do you find managers? How do you find talent? So I started Just Fitness Staffing 7 years ago to address staffing. I would say, the biggest thing I think that gym owners need to do when they're looking for talent is start with the basics. So start with the job description. The job description has to be buttoned up. Lead with the top compensation that your position is able to offer. So trainers, for example, or a small group, you're going to want to advertise, hey, the earning potential on the position, up to $35 an hour, up to $40 an hour. But lead with that, right? In the job description. Don't leave those things down at the bottom. Also, make sure you're including any benefits, right? So I would say, the biggest tips are like, sometimes it's just starting with your basic job description and making sure that that's buttoned up first. Include Instagram, include any benefits and perks like, hey, we also allow a free membership for a spouse or significant other or friend. All of those things can be highlighted in your job description. The next thing is going to be, where are you posting? I've tried it all over 11 years, like finishjobs.com and, LinkedIn. I've done it all. The number one source is Indeed. Make sure your job is on Indeed and make sure that you're refreshing that position. So you can't post it once and then go back, 3 months later and go, hey, I don't have any candidates. You need to be reposting that, once a week or once every 2 weeks right now in today's market. So that kind of starts with the basics. And then another, I think, really helpful tip for your job posting when it comes to just the posting alone is make sure that you're optimizing the posting with keywords that candidates search. So personal trainer, for example, for a small group facility needs to look something like, if you're going on to post, it needs to say personal trainer / fitness coach or something similar to that, because that way you're addressing multiple keywords that candidates search versus just personal trainer or versus just fitness instructor or fitness coach.
Well, because different franchises, right, use different terminologies, right? Some people are coaches at a gym. Some people are personal trainers at a gym. Some people are fitness instructors. So I guess what you're saying is you have to use all the different types of titles in your job posts in order to capture those people who might refer to themselves or be searching for some other keyword that you don't call your staff coaches, but you call them something else. So you want to make sure to capture all those titles.
Right. Similar to your CEO, right? Your search, your SEO.
Yeah. Similar to SEO, right? Yeah.
CEO, SEO, but you want those optimized for the candidates that are actually hunting for jobs. So I think, with anything, again, I listened to your podcast. Vince was on here talking about the marketing strategies and the glove marketing. But as gym owners and the ones that are listening to the pod, and many times you're kind of running this thing on your own, right? So it's always going to start with that job description first. The next one's going to be, make sure you're posting on your social media regularly, and Instagram, right? It's okay to have a post here and there saying, hey, we're hiring. These are the key positions. This is the earning potential, because your followers are going to see that. Your members are going to see that. And then if you can do some sort of incentive, incentivizing your members for referrals, that's always going to be, the next piece. So we tend to see across the board this, referrals stay longer, right? They tend to be a better fit. And they are not always coming into the industry with certifications and things like that, but they have the passion, they have those other things. So I think sometimes, even just looking at your current membership base and being able to pull from that, is an opportunity. But if nobody's asking, and if the gym isn't asking, then people don't know, right? So I think those are a couple things, just in building a future pipeline of talent for teams, specifically to personal trainers or coaches, right?
Yeah, and if you look, I'm looking at your LinkedIn now. It says you've worked with over 1,000 clients, and you're placing over 800 people a year. So that means you're hiring 800 people a year. So
at one point, that was the pace. Yes, that was the pace with with some of the big box gyms I was working with. Plus, I was also staffing the general managers, any other sales positions that were opening up, marketing executives. It was across the board. So
even for like a decent sized small gym, an active year would be maybe 10 hires. So like you probably have like 1,000x the experience of the average gym owner on the show. Is that is that kind of like the main reason someone should work with you, or is it save them time? Like what was the problem you were solving?
I think who said it best, Jeff, when he was on your podcast recently. So working with Jeff and Devin at Gage Fitness and Engage Training. Listen, when we work with a client, it's weekly staffing support. So I go in, I address, getting candidates through job postings, but everything else we do is going directly to candidates and, for lack of better terms, soliciting them towards your particular brand. And we do it in a week, right? So most of the time, a client like Jeff or Devin, like, they don't have the time. You guys don't have the time to go and manually review 300, 400, 500 resumes a day for 7 days straight. That's what I do when I work with a client. I've always operated that way. So that's where we're able to basically address sometimes multiple needs with a client within just 1 week of working.
And it's also like a nice buffer, right? Because I'm assuming you go to all their competitors and be like, hey, we're hiring for this position. And if like it gets back to them, they can just be like, whoa, that's our staffing person. We don't know.
Right.
It was an accident. So sorry. And so it creates kind of like this layer where you can get probably a little closer and be a little more candid than an owner would, right?
Yes. As long as it's not a current client of mine, like, it's fair game. You're fair game. I will reach out to you.
I'm not for hire, so just
yeah. Well,
so I think a lot of times people will just like post on Indeed and then they'll just stop. And I know that's where we struggle too, to find candidates, because I didn't know what else to do besides that. What are other things people can do besides just posting a job description in order to get quality candidates?
So great question. So there are, ways, there are platforms. Indeed is one of them. You have to have a subscription, but you can actually, owners can learn how to do the things that I do. But you can manually review, you can pull keyword searches, you can pull up, personal trainers that are within 10 or 15 miles or less, 5-10 miles from your studio. And you can see when a candidate's been active, You can see if they uploaded their resume 2 days ago, they're probably going to be receptive to a new opportunity. And you can contact those candidates directly. You have to pay to do it all. But there are platforms that you can actually proactively contact the type of candidate that you want to contact. The key is knowing how to craft the outreach and, being selective with who you're contacting, because there's only so many contacts within a certain budget before you have to replenish it again with Indeed. That's one thing that I also pay for when a client works with me. My fee includes all of the fees that I have to do, to pay to get these candidates. They don't have to do any of that. I just serve them the candidate and go, hey, here's 5 or 6 general managers, studio managers, sales managers in a week's time that you can interview and select from. They've already seen your brand. They're interested in the opportunity. All you have to do is interview and choose who you like the best. Sometimes the biggest problem is they're like, wait, we want to hire 2 or 3 of them. I guess we'll just save these for our next, club openings. I'm like, good. That means it's working. Not necessarily for me, but it's working for you, and that was the goal.
So I guess, it's not just enough just to post. You have to also go and look at people in the industry who might be a potential fit, and you're directly like headhunting these people. What are these outreach messages like what's your approach? Like what's the content? How do you get someone to like respond to your
what are the secrets? I like to lead with earning potential, because let's just think about, what's going to make me do something else if you're going to come to me. Well, what's the opportunity? What's the job title or whatever? And, how much are you going to pay me? I mean, let's be real. That's what people want to know. And then what's the trajectory? Like, where do we go from here? Could I move into a regional position? Vince or no, one of your other, I've been listening to all your podcasts, that I am
as everyone should.
I am a super stalker when it comes to my job. I'm a super sleuth is a better way to say it. But I've been researching and listening, but I know one of your owners is getting ready to open in Orange County, and we're just sort of like,
Yeah, that's one of your clients too. It's Jeff.
Yeah, that's Jeff. That's what I thought. I was like, but I listened to Vince, and anyway. So, but I think the key is you have to know, like you have to be able to go to candidates and directly connect, and you can't rely on job postings right now. I think that's where I'm trying to go with this.
What percentage of the candidates that you supply in a given job come from like outbound versus inbound interest usually?
So I would say 3 out of 10 candidates apply directly, if even. That would be a high. Everybody else is headhunted. And usually the candidate that I headhunted is the one that they selected.
So this is huge. And I would guess very few people actually do this. Like if they're not working with somebody like you, right? I'm trying to think of gym owners who would do this.
Oh yeah, no, I've never heard and we went through many mentor groups, many business gurus. No one really there'll be templates on how to craft a job post, but no one really tells you, no, you have to go and DM people the same way you DM leads for your gym. You have to go in and find quality candidates and do some outreach. So I think that's a pretty important piece that no one really talks about.
And for like a position, like a general manager type, like a key hire, a GM type position, because we talk so much about multi-location, the operator manager person matters so much. How many candidates would you recommend somebody interviews when they're looking to find the right one?
That's a great question. It really takes one, right? It takes the right candidate. So you could interview 3 to 5, but it's sometimes this is actually happening right now. Sometimes it's the first candidate I present that they're like, this is everything I wanted. I'm like, that's great. That's the mission. It's fine, but go ahead and do your comparison candidates too. Or what I encourage is if I'm working with a client and we are able to put together 5 or 6, general manager caliber candidates or director of training, they're running the facility and also coaching, right? Like at least at bare minimum, meet with that candidate, right? If we're just working together for a week and you can, shoulder the time for 5 to 6 conversations, meet those candidates, roll out the red carpet, make sure they're having a good, experience with your brand, because you never know, right? Like you never know the person that you hire is going to stay. Ideally they do. We tend to have a high turnover industry, but either way, like you have this pipeline of talent for the future. Because I think sometimes what people do is they fill that position. They don't look at any of the other resumes anymore or any of the other people who've come in. And then all of a sudden an opening pops up and they're like, what are we going to do? They're scrambling, but they had 5 or 6 other people that were highly qualified that, just given that touch point, they could immediately go back to if they're treating that candidate properly in the interview process. So I would say probably, 3 comparison candidates, 2 to 3 comparison candidates, but it really just depends on that right person.
So it sounds like you've looked at hundreds, maybe, I don't know, you tell me, maybe thousands of LinkedIn profiles, Instagram profiles, seen a bunch of resumes. Are there any red flags where there's something what do you look for when it's oh, this actually is not someone I should send to this gym owner? Are there any red flags or things you look at in terms of screening clients and oh, they're not going to be a good fit?
Mm-hmm. Longevity is one of them. We tend to see movement, obviously, in our industry, but a studio manager, for example, if they're at an F45, then an Orange Theory, then a Restore Hyper Wellness, and it's all about a year, you're kind of going, probably not selling the memberships, or it could be, a tough franchise owner that they might be working with. It's possible, but if you have 2 or 3 on your record, probably not somebody I'm going to include in my outreach, right? So I would say longevity is the biggest thing that I look for. Still to this day, our resumes in our industry tend to be littered with grammar issues.
Right.
And, that's just, I've also been working with owners that I'm they don't spell their correctly.
You can't spell either.
But here you are. Here you are running the whole thing. So I think, we're kind of an interesting industry, but things that I also look for are candidates that when I contact them, get back to me immediately and go, hey, yes, I'm ready to hop on a call. When can you connect? That is a leading indicator for me. And I always will highlight things like that to my clients too. I actually have one right now, Ken Stewart, he's Blackout Fitness. But one of the candidates, just from the bat, she's been great. You can see that energy translate even in written communication. So I like to, tell owners, a candidate that sends you a thank you afterwards is probably going to do the same thing with your members, right? They're probably going to follow up with your members too. They've researched your company. This candidate right now, the interesting thing is the percentage of people that are doing the most basic, things that we've been taught over the years of, research the company, bring your resume, dress professionally. It's almost an anomaly now when you come across them. It's almost too good to be true, but then sometimes it really is a really fantastic candidate. So
it sounds like
in tech, you'll get people who show up and it's what do we do? They're like, I don't have no clue. Yeah. And so we may be in software, that may be the only industry where most candidates are less prepared than in fitness. So fitness software, now forget about it.
Oh, wow.
It's a completely different
who does that?
Yeah.
I actually was hiring once for a position. It was a marketing based position, but I was sending out a follow-up email asking people to schedule an interview with me. It's pick a spot on the calendar, 15 minutes. And for one, I accidentally put my Zoom link instead of my calendar link. And I got a notification 10 seconds after I sent it, the guy was just in my Zoom room ready for an interview. So that's the kind of, I'd imagine that's the kind of sign you're looking for, someone who's immediate and ready to go.
I mean, I love it when it happens, but it can also be a red flag sometimes too, depending on their background. Like, wait a second, you're very eager for this position.
Right. Maybe a little
But
too
So we want
eager.
eager, but not too eager.
typically the pace we're working with, though, when somebody's working with me is a 1 week project. So that's the goal when a client comes to work with me is like, hey, is it a GM position, general manager, studio manager? Is it a personal trainer? Is it two personal trainers? With my business model, sometimes we can knock out multiple placements in a 1 week project. So there are several brands that, depending on the brand that I'm working for, depending on what they're compensating, we're able to sometimes knock out a director of training and a head coach position, and sometimes a part-time trainer out of one search of working with me.
It's basically like Hell Week. Every time you get hired, you just have to like grind for just go to town. You have calluses on your thumbs from all the DMs you're sending. Yeah, look at that.
There's a
And
reason why my computer almost crashed on our first go at this today.
Yeah, for those viewers, we're on our second attempt at this podcast, so we want to get it just right for you. And so, you think Indeed is the best platform for sourcing talent for Outbound, or you use something different?
For Outbound, I think Indeed for sure. And the next one would be LinkedIn. Of course, you're going to have so many contacts that you can use with your InMails, but also Instagram, if you have the time to get, really kind of gritty. I'll tell you one tip for Instagram: you better follow that person first, or that message, that DM's not going to go through.
It's not going
you better
anywhere.
Follow them. You better like some pictures first, but have some finesse before you just come right at them being like, hey, we want to hire you. And one way I like to frame it up is, hey, I have this position in, let's just say, West Palm Beach, earning potential up to 50 an hour. We'd love to connect with you if you're open to it, or if you know anybody who's interested. Like, that can keep it really casual too, if you're not using a third party, like someone like me. That way, I hear this term coaching all the time in our industry, but I'm just really like, how else are you going to do it? Because these candidates aren't coming to you otherwise. They're happily employed, or they're working somewhere else, or they're busy. Oh, and here's the other thing. Don't contact trainers. First of all, they're trainers, but don't email them one time and go, oh, well, they never got back to me. If it's somebody you're headhunting, first of all, they're trainers. So text and email, and then ask for 5 to 7 minutes. Don't send them to a Zoom link, or don't send them to something else. Just say, hey, when you have 5 to 7 minutes to hop on a call now. Oh, and also make it time sensitive. Now through Wednesday, now through Friday. That's going to get candidates to respond. Oh, as a reminder, earning potential on this position is up to 50 an hour. Those kind of things get candidates to respond to you. And especially when you're headhunting them, or when you're trying to solicit them, versus just waiting for them to apply.
Isn't there a saying that all the best talent already has a job?
I mean, I think so. Or they're entrepreneurs.
Right.
Yeah, the worst talent's entrepreneurs usually. It's we're not built to work for other people.
We recently had someone on who, had a pretty robust coaching internship program, and the way they got candidates was, going and doing events, particularly at colleges. I know you had some experience doing those kinds of recruiting events in person when you were working for Equinox. Are there any tips or lessons learned from doing in-person kind of, hiring booths and things like that?
That's a great question. Yes. So first, I'd like to say some of the best events that I've done. So Perform Better, definitely. I feel like for your audience, Perform Better is going to have, either owners or coaches that are at that kind of caliber that you're looking at. So that's a great one for networking. Idea, Ursa, these other big fitness conventions. If you have a booth, what I suggest creating is a card a candidate can take with them. I mean, it sounds really old school, but I used to like to include, I would advertise it with, hey, personal trainers at Crunch can make up to 100,000 a year. include benefits, right? Like here are, 401k, include a couple benefit highlights, your Instagram, and then how to apply, put a direct email on there, not some like goes to resumes at crunch.com, or sorry for just using references, but most of the time you're going to get maybe like 5 or 10 people that even do that in the first place. But letting them actually take something with them, I think is good, but also you've got to get their information on the spot. So even recently it's like, get their Instagram, get their contact information. But you've got to have a way to like capture that information while that candidate's with you, but also give them something valuable, not just like a business card that they can actually go and you're getting their information that way. That would be, I guess, but I think the biggest thing is just consistency. So I think, expos are helpful in that you're able to go and talk to people like NASM and network with ACE and, you get FaceTime with these new programs that are out, these new certifications. But that's, going back to Vince's like glove marketing philosophy, you've got job postings, you've got social media, you've got referrals, school relationships. So local school relationships, people always overlook this, but it's like you can go directly to the athletic departments, to kinesiology, to exercise science. You're speaking to the people that are going to sometimes be taking those lower price point, lower wage opportunities because they're just coming out of college, right? But so from a budget standpoint, that totally makes sense. But also just from a brand building standpoint, people get to know you. So school relationships, one of the best ones out here that I've come across is Jeff Kryle and his Moore Park College program. At one point, I think he was putting a couple hundred students through a hands-on personal training program every, 6 to 9 months or so. And same thing with NPTI, National Personal Training Institute. I was on another podcast and people had never heard of that. They didn't know that was available, but NPTI is another great one. Like make relationships with these programs and these school programs that are providing hands-on education before that candidate gets certified. So school programs are going to be part of that.
We were talking earlier, sounds like Equinox plans on hiring 5,000 trainers over the next 2 years. And the way they were doing that is they just like created their own certification program in conjunction with a school because there just like weren't enough available trainers for them to actually hire. So it seems like more and more we see people like going to the actual source and like minting trainers instead of actually trying to like hire existing ones because they're just so difficult to do. What position do you think is the most difficult to fill?
So back to that comment really quick. So getting people certified, just another, I guess, accessory to our service is that we have partnerships with those major certifications like NASM, and we can help people get discounted certs for that. So if a client works with me, that's another one of our perks is like, hey, we get a pretty significant discount and we can get somebody connected directly and get them into the certification process quick at a better rate. So I would say the most difficult position to fill is actually front desk. It's so crazy. It is insane.
Why do you think that is? Because I think that's probably true.
It's so hard.
Why do you think that is?
I think, likely it's sort of it's a lower wage and can be tough hours, right? Because they sometimes need to be in at 4 or 5 in the morning.
$80,000 a year at the front desk.
That's my theory, right? My theory is people don't want to pay a lot for this position, even though it's like so crucial and important, right? So so you can't attract a quality candidate because you don't want to pay enough, but also then you have this person that doesn't do a good job, so then you fire them anyway. And so it's just like this endless cycle of going through front desk people. At least that was my experience. I don't know if that is true for you.
So what's the solution at Mateo Fitness Staffing? How do we fix that?
Right? You guys are going to start your own thing. No. So I think the solution for front desk is also kind of going back to the school relationships, but kind of working your members, but But here's the thing. I don't know. I don't want to consult on front desk because pre-sales and membership sales is not my expertise. Recruiting, getting candidates into the pipeline, I'm so good at that. But I think, in general, this has to be something that you're consistently working on and also having a pipeline of talent for. So I would say, again, Indeed, making sure your job description is kind of optimized for that position as well. But you're probably going to want to look at like athletes, people that are just coming out of school programs and kind of need their foot in the door with your facility. So maybe as a segue to becoming a personal trainer, they start at front desk and they're kind of like learning the ropes first, right? But it's such a critical position. So I said this recently, I'm like, I went into a place here in LA, it's a luxury $350 a month. And they didn't even offer me a tour the first time I went. It was just sort of like, okay, well, I mean, you understand that the value is like significant when just one person walks out the door that day. Like imagine 2 or 3 of us just, that's $15,000 a year right there in just a couple of hours. I wish I had a better solution for front desk other than just saying it's the most difficult. But I think that with any position, if you have the time and you go directly to candidates and you say, hey, here's our opportunity, maybe don't call it front desk. I think that's
general
always
manager
a
and
thing
training
too. Even taking the membership part out of it, that is one thing. Okay, so sales representative or account executive or account representative or membership, there are different ways that you can frame it up and finesse it.
Leadership development program. That's what every like bullshit out of college low
manager
level
and
job calls their
training.
thing. Yeah, exactly.
Member
It's our
experience.
leadership development program. You work primarily with like multi-location owners. For people like that, you talk about the importance of keeping the pipeline open. Do you recommend having like evergreen job postings? So just always having a GM post out, always having a coach post, always having a front desk post out.
Yes.
Or yeah, so all the time, just get people in there.
Yes.
Always be hiring.
Always be hiring. Like seriously.
Do you review in like steady state, or will you just let it compile over 6 months and when it comes time to hire you sift through like
steady state?
Yeah.
Yeah. And just daily. That's the thing. And I think that's the other thing is it's just like anything, scheduling this as part of your process. And honestly, this is the most critical piece is your people. So the fact that it just sort of like kind of gets off the radar, at some point, most of the time, even if it's 2 to 3 years down the road, people leave. And I have this conversation with owners so much. It's like, oh my gosh, we lost one, but then like 2 other people left. And now we have this gaping hole in our coaching schedule and we got to get it filled. And what do we do? Because nobody's applying on Indeed. And so that's usually where we come in and we're like, hey, we can do this. But if every day you're looking at those, 5 to 10 candidates who come through and apply, let's just say there are that many, but most of the time there aren't right now. There aren't that many people applying for jobs. So I would say less, if you can handle less than 20, looking at 20 resumes a day, if even, that would be the hottest market. That would be like a New York market, maybe 20 people apply in a day. I doubt it.
I remember back in the day, we would get like hundreds. The posts would get live and you would just get inundated. And that was like, what do we use? We use like Craigslist or something awful.
No, it was Indeed, and it was most of the time it was trash. It was most of the time just really bad. I mean, we had to put in like extra steps to like make sure people were qualified. Like make a video explaining this job post that you supposedly just read. We had to filter that way, but that may have been just unique to New York at the time.
Prior to COVID, I would say, yes, that was definitely the case. Because again, I've been doing this 11 years. So I remember what it used to be like. And let's be mindful right now, I'm not staffing New York. I'm not staffing Los Angeles. I'm working these pretty tough areas in, remote parts of the country where I'm seeing maybe 2 candidates that actually even apply during the week that I work with the client. So yes, if you're in a major market, you're getting, so many, you're so overwhelmed, you absolutely put some screening questions in there to weed them out. But most of the time, if it's not you, someone, or having that accountability on your studio manager, general manager to be going through those resumes and, pulling out the better candidates. And here's the other thing I always say, I'm like, hey, if they applied, like, they're a membership lead, aren't they?
Oh yeah, you could get them to join the gym.
I mean,
if you don't hire
Members
them.
will be given priority.
Yeah.
it seems sometimes that's the only way. I'm like, okay, so let's think of this like a member. So just a candidate, for example, like, you don't just call a member once and expect them to sign up, right? Like, you're
Well,
gonna
a
call
lot of them
them,
do.
you're
We have to
gonna,
tell them
yeah.
not to, but yes, we have to tell them to call them more. But yes, ideally, yes, you're following up a lot. Yes.
Yeah.
Like lead costs are going up when you start seeing videos of, like, I think Luca posted something where it's like, drive Uber and then sell people in the Uber. And Jesse's like, yeah, just put up job postings and then sell everybody who walks into the
Yeah.
job. We're just going Gym World, there's free alpha. We're coming up with the cheapest ways to get leads.
I think it's okay to have, so I would say for a general manager and a personal trainer, we're talking small group training, right? I want to address your listeners. So always have, some kind of head coach or coaching opportunity posted, probably obviously front desk, since that's obviously always needed. And then why not have the studio manager GM? Because I've also had clients come to me, they're like, hey, I need a confidential replacement. But guess what? If you always have that posted, there's nothing like, hey, all of a sudden I saw my job posted online. It's like, hey, we always have that posted. But in the meantime, you're always
do a
getting
good
pipeline
job.
of
But
potential
you're
candidates.
doing great. But
Hey, let's be
you
real.
can always do better.
There's a reason why I'm, I have this business. It's because there's turnover in this industry. So
if you're a gym, we talked about how you could like source candidates. We talked about how you could write a better job posting. How do you like position the gym chain itself? Because I'm assuming some brands and some concepts are way easier to get talent than others. Like, what can you do to kind of position yourself as like a place good talent wants to work?
well, if it comes to the job description, there should always at least be a little blurb like, hey, so let's just use Alloy, for example. When I work with Alloy, I always include, brand's been around 30 years. We have over 130 new locations coming to the United States. Like, we want to grow, are you with us kind of thing?
Let's say you're not. Like, let's say you're like a 1 or 2 location gym. Like, what would you tell someone like that doesn't have as compelling of a story as, say, like an Alloy or the Engage group?
Mm-hmm. So I think, speaking to your audience, right? Because many of these are over 40 or they're athlete performance. Like, hey, our specialty is athlete, youth fitness. And we also do small group training for adults. Either way, something about the brand needs to be in there, but I think including the Instagram handle is the best way. So this is one thing where I'll say everybody needs to check themselves, including myself. Don't go to my Instagram, but like, your Instagram as a gym needs to have like your members or your trainers. You guys have to continue to have that content. And that's what I see with what you're doing with the clients that I've worked with coming from Kilo. You're doing a really good job of helping them build a brand that looks good, looks cool, looks fun. And also, PS, they can make bank working with you or working at this particular location. But I think their unique brand needs to come out in that. And that's what I'm seeing. So like I said, I'm working with Blackout Fitness right now, Victory Fit. We just did Jared's general manager. But when I go on and I'm looking as a recruiter, but I'm like, I want to see what it's like from a candidate experience. They need to have a good website. It needs to look good, it needs to feel good. And it's so critical because people are not, they're not going to apply for, an independently owned gym that has a really crappy, boring website that's antiquated, they're just not doing it. It's gotta have the pizzazz that I'm not trying to do like a plug for Kilo, but that's what I'm seeing when I go on.
You can do a plug for Kilo.
The graphic design looks cool. Like, it's easy to navigate. Like, you're capturing the client information that, I got an email from Jared today. It said something like, I'm thinking of you. And I was like, oh, he must know I'm about to jump on the podcast. It was like, hey, let us know when you're ready to come in for your session. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's you guys.
There we go.
Yeah.
Use Kilo, folks. Link in bio.
So I think that's an interesting point because we have spent some time on the podcast highlighting the importance of having an active social media presence. Like it has to look like the lights are on, as John says, at your gym, and that there's it has to look like a cool place to work out for potential, prospects and members. But I think something that we haven't talked about, which I think is important that you're highlighting here, is it also should look like a cool place to work for potential, hiring candidates. So yeah, maybe for those listening, working on your social media calendar, sprinkle in some posts about your coaches and why it would be a cool place to work. I think that's something that's important that we should highlight. And talking about the website, is there anything that gym owners should be doing on their about page or their staff section that could be helpful in recruiting people when they're checking out a business that they might want to apply for?
Great question. So I always used to have a challenge with this in big box staffing. I was like, our careers, I can't even find our careers page. Like, how do I even navigate to apply right now? And then it would be like, give us your blood type, and nobody's it needs to be very basic, but also move the career page if you can. If you have an urgent need, which I think most everybody does right now, why is your career page hidden at the bottom of your page, right? Lead with that. We're hiring. Why don't you have a banner or something getting candidates directly to a way that's easy to navigate, or capture their information, upload a resume, whatever. Or they could just email you directly. I'm old school, as you guys know, but I'll just say, hey, just email me your resume. I still post that on LinkedIn to this day.
Probably effective. There's
just an opportunity, I think, to also highlight your current employees the way that you guys do with members. So hey, this member has been here for 50 sessions now or 200 sessions. Why aren't we doing that for our employees? Because people want to feel good. They also want to be recognized. And yes, we do that sometimes once a year or something, but it needs to be consistent, just like everything else. Consistency is key.
And strategy, right? It sounds like there's a strategy to it rather than just oh, job empty, need employee. And it's just you're kind of hand to mouth, rather than being this is my hiring strategy. This is how I get the best people. Because if you look at all these job postings for a lot of these gyms, they use the same templates because everyone's in some type of group, and they'll say I'm looking for a coaching ninja and we only hire A players and
rock stars.
excellent rock stars, excellence. And then you go to their Instagram page and they haven't posted anything in 3 fucking years. So it's you obviously don't you go to their website, the form is broken. There are obviously elements here of that don't align with what this templated job post saying. So I like the idea you're saying here where if you don't have all this stuff, you got to lead with the comp and a very clear story, or you have to have a strategy for hiring and a strategy for making it look like your gym isn't a shitty place to work out and a shitty place to work. Because, it's when you talk to someone, you meet someone, where do you work? You want to be able to have people Google that place and the internet say good things and the photos look good and not be embarrassed. Oh, no, it looks way better in person. So, it definitely is it is nice and interesting for us, at least, to hear, to think that there needs to be a holistic strategy to it, kind of like there is for the other elements of the business.
It makes sense too. If you're someone looking to work out at a gym, you're going to Google gym near me and then look at the ones around you. But I imagine if you're looking for a job and you're a coach, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to look for gyms in your town that are commutable, and you're going to go to those gyms Google business profile, and then you're going to go to their website. And yeah, if it's not easy to find a way to apply, then yeah, you're going to lose out on some of those candidates that are probably looking the same way that your prospects are looking for a gym.
And on the site, I would, again, highlight the max earning potential. Can this person earn up to 120 at your facility? Is that something that consistently happens? Because if that's the case, seems to me that you should be able to advertise.
You're going to get
right?
the best coaches.
Yeah, you can be a little weaker on the Instagram if you're paying 120. So that's they work inverse. You can have a pretty crummy website if your front desk people make 80 grand a year.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked to hear that from an owner in Houston the other day, but I was like, hey, I mean, that's a selling point, but if you're not spelling that out, like, how do people know that 5 of your top trainers are making 6 figures right now? I didn't know that. I landed on a page, but if it's spelled out in that career section, I think that's helpful. The last thing I'll say to your holistic approach is, how many of these don't have a LinkedIn profile built for their particular location? So the website's awesome, but also LinkedIn is still a place that people really do go, and they will also research your company. So if you haven't built out it, LinkedIn is free. Like, build out a page for your particular location and post on there every now and then. Again, consistency, right? Like, schedule it, put it on your calendar, go in and do a LinkedIn post once a month or something. But
so many gyms, and we were guilty of this too, it has just that like gray stock LinkedIn circle photo for the business instead of like the gym's logo. Yeah, I'm sure that's like thing number one you should probably have on your business's LinkedIn profile to show that you're alive.
100%. So definitely make sure your business is buttoned up. But the same thing for candidates. Like, if you don't have a photo on your LinkedIn profile, I don't even know, like, what are you doing? But probably working somewhere you're not happy, or you're happy and you're not looking for a job. But either way, like, it's good to have, I would say most people in our career profession at this point should have a LinkedIn profile. But this is where, back to your question earlier, like, where do you find candidates? I do love LinkedIn, but same kind of thing. If you're super happy, right, you're busy, you're not on your LinkedIn. They're not going to see a LinkedIn message if it's a really high caliber candidate. So that's where you've got to, either have a network of talent. So that's one cool thing that I've developed over 11 years in the business, is like, hey, I've worked with some of the best trainers at Equinox or Crunch or wherever, and now they're all these different places now, right? People have moved, they're in Salt Lake City, whatever. So I can go into certain areas, Atlanta, and I've already got a network of people that I actually personally know. So I think that would be the other thing, is just, looking at your scope and your actual network. And I don't
Make
know.
it selfless. Go to events and talk to humans.
Yeah, you've got to kind of do it all. But that's the thing. That's how it happens. That's how we all got connected, right? Because someday back in the day, I went to Perform Better, and then I met Aaron Mosier, and that Aaron introduced me to Rick Mayo, and then I worked with, like, that's the thing. And then somebody heard about me at Vince's group, and then Vince gave me a shot on a couple projects just to see how it worked. And I think that's the thing. So we said this earlier, I was sort of a pioneer, but I was like, hey, when I came in and I decided to start this business, it was like, how do I come in? How do I fill roles as quickly as possible? Because that's the pace that we move. And efficiently, effectively, with the right kind of talent. So when I work with a client too, these days, it's one of the first things I'll ask is, what's your budget? What are you going to pay this person? If they come in and say, well, 20 an hour, hey guys, sorry, it's not competitive right now. You might not want to hear it. Build it into a bonus, but advertising something at $20 an hour is just north of McDonald's right now.
And based off of my experience going to a bunch of local gyms, it seems like some of the quality is about that level as well. So, you pay 30 and you get 1.5 times it. No, it's actually something where it's probably like, if you pay 20, you're competing with McDonald's, but you have worse benefits and a less stable job. Where you pay 30, you start to get you can start picking people away from there. And then, like, at a level where you're like 40, you're just in a different sphere, and you're probably getting like people who aren't like marginally better, but like that's where you're getting your like 10x people. And so, yeah, it's difficult because I know a lot of gym owners don't have that type of meat on the bone. I know that was something we struggled with a lot, especially being in New York, where, we had salaried staff with benefits, but like, it was top 5% in terms of comp for the industry. But if you live in New York, you need to make 100, you'd be making 100 grand a year and still scraping by, right? Which is just like, for most gym owners, that's a very difficult, especially small gyms, very difficult amount to pay. So,
well, and for the CrossFit industry, it was high, but you're going up against these more boutique concepts that are paying way more per hour.
like
for
200 a class for like
yeah.
elite Soul Cycle instructors.
for
and
so
crazy
exactly
shit like that. So
Well, and that's where, because that's always one of the first questions a client will ask me is like, well, what should I be paying? And I'm like, look, just handle it on an individual basis with that person who's in front of you. Hey, we really want to move forward. Where do I need to be to have a competitive conversation to move forward with you? And that candidate will open up the dialogue most of the time. So, so sometimes it's a strength coach coming from a collegiate program, or, you're going to get people across the board right now, because like you said, some of these franchise owners have really deep pockets. But that's where I think that's another, I kind of know all over the country at this point. And so if you come to me for help in Jersey and you're coming in to me with like $19 an hour, I'm going to tell you it's going to be really hard to get people to come and work for you for 2 to 3 hours a week, which is what you need. I mean, so I also consult with people too. So, I'm happy to help. It's been a wild ride, but that's why I'm so glad. So, you guys brought me up, or Jeff brought me up on the podcast, and now we've been able to help again within 2 to 3 days of the 2 that I've had come from Kilo. We probably have an offer going out to one of the first candidates that we sent through. She was headhunted, but I'm like, cool, this is how it should work. It should be effective.
So you heard it here. If you want to hire your competitors' best people, you hit up Jessie. Jessie, we're running low on time here. How do people find you when you're not finding them?
So my website is Just Fitness Staffing. My email's on there, Jessie@justfitnessstaffing.com. And, I'm not going to leave my cell number, but I'm also on Instagram, Jessie, Jessie .Stackhouse, like you're stacking up houses, or Jerry Stackhouse or Sookie.
Stack. That was what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Sookie.
I get them all.
Sookie.
So you heard it here. We're going to link to all our stuff below. Reach out. If you got hiring needs, we've heard excellent things about her service, because, you got other things on your plate you need to worry about. Don't let sifting through Indeed resumes and reaching out to people on LinkedIn be one of them. Just have somebody else do that for you, so much easier. And that's it today. And this week for Gym World, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a hateful comment. We'll catch you next week.